And welcome. We are continuing our learning through Ein Yacov, and we are now in the page of Ein Yacov. If you have the Sefer, it's page 2, and we're looking at an encounter with Eliyahu Hanavi, an encounter with Elijah the prophet. It was taught by Rabbi Yosi. Says, one day while traveling on the road, I entered one of the ruins of Jerusalem to pray, and suddenly Elijah appeared and stood at the door to guard me and waited until I finished my prayer. And after I finished, says Rabbi Yosi, Elijah said to me, Shalom, peace unto you. And Rabbi and I replied, Shalom, my Rabbi and my master. Now, interesting enough, here we have an overall, completely impressed by the presence of Elijah the prophet. His appearance, Rabbi Yosi was speechless and was unable to greet him properly. Out of great humility and respect, Elijah greeted Rabbi Yosi first, because obviously he was in shock. The question I have here is, how does he recognize Eliyahu Hanavi? Which is a good question. How did he recognize him? But obviously he recognized him, and suddenly Elijah appeared to him, and said Elijah to him, "Son, why did you enter this ruin?" Now keep in mind, the beginning of the verse says that he went to the ruins of Jerusalem to pray. So we're obviously referring to the destruction of Jerusalem. And this is happening during the first century, Common Era, when Jerusalem the walls were breached and so forth. So here we have a very interesting position. It says, Rabbi Yosi, said to Elijah's son, "Why did you enter this ruin to pray?" And I answered, he said, "You should have prayed on the road." And I've explained, I was afraid I may be interrupted by people passing by. And Elijah responded or retorted, "And you should have said a shorter prayer." In other words, you could have still completed your Tefillat Avenu, the abbreviated form of the Shemoneh Esrei of the Amidah, to be said in an emergency, which is permissible to do, to be very quick, to be able to say your Shemoneh Esrei. He goes, you could have done that on the road, because the situation was that of an emergency. It was, a situation there. And I answered, he said, "You should have prayed on the road." And I was afraid I might be interrupted by people passing by. So Elijah responds to, "You should have said a shorter prayer." And then Rabbi Yosi says to him, "This conversation with Elijah taught me 3 things. First, that you should not walk into a ruin. Second, that you are allowed to pray on the road. And third, if you pray on the road, you should say a shorter prayer." And Elijah then said to me, "Son, what voice did you hear in this ruin?" And I replied, "I heard a heavenly voice, and it sounded like a cooing dove." Now, if ever heard a cooing dove, you know that sound of the dove that it makes. And it says, "Woe to the children! Because of their sins I have destroyed my house, I burned my sanctuary, and exiled my children among the nation." 3 things here we hear. Woe to the children. This is the children of Israel that is completely dispersed through all exile now. Because of their sins I have destroyed my house. What was the sins that they committed? Obviously, one of them that we know, but our sages tell us, is Sinat Einam. And we're going to be learning this consistently throughout the period of the 17th of Tammuz all the way to the 9th of Av. Because of unwarranted hatred, they speak very sweet and sugary words, but in their hearts and their minds it's talking about hating one another. And not until this ends among us, among the Jewry, there would not be a restoration, complete restoration back into the land and back to the glory that Israel once had. Until that is taken care of. "Son, what did you hear? What was the voice?" He said, 1, because of their sins I have destroyed my house. 2, I burned my sanctuary. Now notice, he doesn't say that Rome burned the sanctuary, but that Hashem himself burned the sanctuary. He gave him authorization to burn it down. "And I exiled my children among the nations." And Elijah said to me, "I swear by your life and by your head, you should know that this did not happen just that one time. But 3 times each day the heavenly voice laments the destruction of the Beit HaMikdash. 3 times every day, according to this portion of Berachot. 3 times. Remember, in the last passage we saw that there are 3 watches in which Hashem is praying, is crying, because what he had to do to the children of Israel. 3 times. And I exiled my children. Why 3 times? And that's not all. Every time Jews go to the synagogues or to the hall of learning and answer, Yehei Shemei Rabbah Mevorach, may his name be blessed. What does it say there? And this is very interesting, and which is the main part of the Kaddish in the response. It brings Hashem a certain level of satisfaction. It says here, may his name be blessed, the Holy One, blessed be he, and he nods his head. Of course, this is not referring that God has a head, like a lot of people think, God is in a human form, but this is an anthropomorphism to make reference that he was in agreement, saying, yes, he was happy that his children, even when they're banished, praises his name. This is why they're called Jews, Yehuda, those who praise Hashem. May his great name be blessed, the Holy One, blessed be he. He nods his head and says, happy is the king who is praised like this in his house. Allah, that a father has sent his children into exile among idol worshippers, and yet they still praise the one God. You think they'd be influenced by the idol worshipping nation. Just the opposite. Because of their distinction, because of their commitment to Hashem, even though they have been banned in exile, they still are committed to one God concept. Woe to the children who have been banished from their father's table. Now the Gemara summarizes a summary of this and says that the rabbis have taught that there are 3 reasons why a person should not step into a place of ruin. Because people should not suspect that he was meeting a woman there for immoral purposes. Number 1. 2, because the walls may cave in on him. And number 3, because demons that may be living there. Now that takes some understanding and comprehension of what does it mean, the demons, the bukims, and we can go into that later, but we're going to see that as we learned by Rabbi Abraham ben Maimon, many of these things are not to be taken literally, but they're metaphors to refer to other things. In other words, when there is a destruction, there's an emptiness. Interesting enough, where Rabi Yosi was praying was actually in the area of Jerusalem, in which Elijah begins the whole conversation with him. Why are you praying there? Why don't you go on the road? Another escape for your life. Leave. Like many of the great sages had to leave Jerusalem because of the danger and the peril of being killed, of being murdered. One of the things Romans used to do, which a lot of people don't understand, you would take a lot of these main leaders, main characters. The Romans would not only kill them, not only torture them, but they would begin to take their bodies, burn it in fire, take their bones and crush it until there was just powder. And that way the body would be completely disappeared. There would be no proof that a body was ever found. And they did this in order to demonstrate the denial of the resurrection, the denial that there was a body that God would be able to bring back to life. That was one of the things that the Romans did. It was a very cruel thing. There was many cruelty that was done against the Jewish people. But even more cruelty, Hashem allowed these things to happen for one main reason. Because of the sinat hinam, because of the backbiting and speaking evil one against another. Although with their mouth they speak beautifully, but they would backstab. They would harm each other behind the back. Really, things have not changed since over 2,000 years ago in this area of sinat hinam. We have our own Jewish brethren betraying other Jewish brethren, putting them into jail. And it's an incredible thing that's what's happening even till this day. The non-religious and the religious, the strife going on there, it is horrible. The religious, who have more knowledge than many of the seculars, utilize that and tries to wipe them away. This is a terrible repetition of what happened during this ugly period of time of the Jewish people. If we don't change ourselves in our way of behaving, no one can change us, except if we allow ourselves to be changed. May Hashem give us the fortitude and the strength and the ability and the wisdom to be able to change ourselves, to be able to change our surrounding, and be able to bring all of Israel back to that level of love for a fellow Jew, love for one another. Shalom, shalom, may you have a great week. This was just an encounter with Elijah the prophet, calling the children back home. Shalom, shalom.